Ezra chapter number 3 and verse number 9. Then stood Jeshua with his sons and his brethren, Kadmiel and his sons and the sons of Judah, together to set forward the workmen in the house of God. The sons of Henadad with the sons and their brethren, the Levites. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, they set the priests in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise the Lord after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And they sang together by chorus and praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the priests and the Levites and the chief of the fathers, who were ancient men, they had seen the first house. When the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, the ancient men, the older men, they wept with a loud voice, and many shouted aloud for joy. For that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the noise was heard afar off. I think you probably know, coming out of the book of Ezra, what has happened here. 70 years earlier, the Babylonians had come down and taken the children of Israel into what we call the Babylonian captivity. For 70 years, the people of Israel were enslaved to them. And God began to move on a servant's heart by the name of Nehemiah. He was servant. He was a cupbearer of the king. And God began to move on him to go back to Jerusalem and to build the city again. You know the story, how the king not only allowed him to go, but gave him everything that he needed to get back to that land and to establish the place of living in the land of Jerusalem again. Not long after that, that same king sent Ezra. Nehemiah was a builder. Ezra was a priest. He was a preacher. And the king sent him back not only to build the city back, but he knew a city being built that wasn't linked to God would eventually crumble. So the king sent the preacher, Ezra. And it was Ezra that got together with all the builders of Israel that I named to you, and they built the temple. Because no nation can survive, can thrive, and can stand on its own unless God's with them. So Ezra has begun to build the temple. So all the children of Israel that have come back, some 50,000 by now, they have come to watch him lay the foundation of the temple. And the Bible said that there was such an ecstatic aroma in Jerusalem that when the builders laid the foundation and the man of God was standing there, the Bible said the young men shouted her out. Praise God, we're getting the church built. And the Bible said the ancient men wept. Now there's two basic interpretations of these verses. Some people believe that the old men wept because they were not physically to exert emotional shouting like the young men did. But they were so ecstatic about the foundation being laid that they were just weeping over it. The second interpretation is the one that I believe. The Bible says specifically that these ancient men saw the foundation of the first house. And I think the older men were weeping because they saw what they were building the second time was nothing like they had experienced the first time. Something had changed. And the temple and the worship and Jerusalem would never be the same again. And it hasn't been. With that thought in mind, I want to preach on the subject, some things that will never be the same again in America. Throughout our history of this great land, there has been defining moments that has happened. And in those defining moments, it has changed both the course and the character of our nation. Things like the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, slavery being abolished, the inventing of the light bulb, electric communications, wars, earthquakes, floods. How about landing on the moon? What about the atomic bomb that allowed us to win World War II? Assassinations, public shootings, LGBT rights, technical revolution. Who would have dreamed several years ago that you could go down the road and while you're traveling, pull up preaching on your phone and listen to a church service driving down the road? Who would have dreamed that without a cord being attached, I could be standing here in Tennessee and talk to somebody in Minnesota? The technical world has totally changed our country. And then, of course, who could forget the tragic day of 9/11? But now we face a new enemy. And what makes this enemy so complicated is that it's invisible. And it's plunged our country into a war like none of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. And as a result of this virus, emotions, actions, and desperation has reached an all-time high. America will never be the same again. I don't know if you know it or not, but we are witnessing the evolution and the beginning of a new foundation being laid for the future of this country. And I'm an old man. My temples are gray. My children are grown. My body is dissipating. I remember how it used to be. So when I see the younger generation coming on, clapping and applauding because of what they have, I too sit there and weep because I remember how it used to be. And what they're shouting about now is nothing like it was 42 years ago when I got born again. The next generation will think everything is fine because they will have no memory of the America that you and I lived in. This last travesty has revealed several areas of our nation that needs to be not only exposed, but changed, and God help to be refocused. I'm going to say some things today that's going to cost me probably some television stations. I know it's going to cost me some friendships among preachers, and it may even come to the point where you run me off. But the only thing I want you to remember is I came here preaching, and bless God, I'll leave here preaching, and I'm not changing. There are some fundamental things in this country that people are applauding that is sickening to what I remember when I was a child 60 years ago. So I want to deal with, maybe I might get through a couple of them and I'll be done. Number one, the one that's bugging me the most is I'm weeping, and it's never going to be the same when it comes to the Congress and the leadership of our country. Our founding fathers would not recognize this country today as the one that they loaded up ships and left England to get away from, to find. Politics has so changed in my lifetime that I wake up every day wondering how anything nationally ever gets done. I'm old enough to remember when parties worked together. I remember when Democrats and Republicans would talk things out, shake hands, go out and eat together. And they focused on helping the people of America and wanting America to prosper no matter who the president was or what party he was, because their mind was on the people and not themselves. Now, there are some things about our Congress that I don't like, and I'm going to tell you what I don't like. And as long as they're doing it, I'm going to keep preaching on it. So if you don't like it, you need to find somewhere else to go. Ladies and gentlemen, our Congress has become anti-capitalism. They have taken our jobs and sent them to other countries. Now, this burns me up. We got lifetime politicians that have been in Washington for 40 years, and now they're getting on television and saying, we need to bring industry back to America. We need to bring our medical treatments back to America. We need to bring our steel industry back to America. Can I serve notice on those pug-nosed liberals? We never wanted them to leave in the first place, honey. It wasn't our fault that they left in the first place. And I'm offended that the same ones that sold us out now want to stand up and act like a national hero and try to bring things back to America. We should have never sold out this country in the first place. America should always be a self-sustaining, sovereign nation. We shouldn't have to ask China for anything. We shouldn't have to ask Korea for anything. We shouldn't have to ask Russia for anything. We ought to have our food here, our medicine here, our military here, our bombs here. And if they don't like it, we'll meet them on the battlefield. Now, the average population, sad to say, even some of you that are members of this church, you disgust me. You so lean on the government for checks. You're nothing but a sold-out spiritual hobo, and you've sold your soul for a stinking monthly government check. Socialism, humanism, and communism has always been enemies of freedom, and they always shall be. Let me tell you what capitalism teaches. It teaches you work, you earn, you gain, you prosper. That's what capitalism means. You get out of bed, you get a job, you work, you save your money, and then you buy something with it. That's capitalism. Socialism teaches you trust, you depend, you yield, and then you're enslaved. May I say this? I think every office in the United States of America, from the Supreme Court justices on down, every one of them ought to be on term limits. None of them should be put in a position for a lifetime. Now, I respect our Supreme Court, but I want to say this. When they show me pictures of it, it looks like an advertisement from a nursing home. Bless God, some of them can't even sit up straight. They're foaming at the mouth. They don't even know where they're at half the time. They got Alzheimer's. My God, we got a guy running for president, don't know what state he's in half the time. If he's I mean, the man don't know if he's running for Congress or president. It's the craziest bunch of mess I've ever seen in my life. There has to be a time when some of these old goats need to retire and go home and let somebody else come in and have a vision about the future of our country. They're anti-capitalism. They don't want you to work and succeed and prosper on your own. And with that in mind, I have a letter I want to send to our president. President Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, I have a letter for you. Dear sir, I fully understand that we are charting uncomfortable and unwanted territory. And trust me, we the people are as concerned just as much as the leadership is about the future of our nation. It's hard to watch young men go back to cutting grass, trimming shrubs, and detailing cars to try to get enough money to feed their family when I know that just a couple of months ago they had good pay and stable incomes. I see the stress on women's faces as they wander from everything to having food on their table to being able to make next month's house payment. And it's affecting even the countenance of their face, President Trump. I witnessed children being out of school. The school buses are parked and empty. Yet no children are playing in the neighborhood. They're not running in the parks with their friends. And, Mr. President, we can't even have a birthday party. I drive by a lot of churches every Sunday, and I view nothing but empty parking lots with outdated notices on their marquee signs. Be it known, Mr. President, these days are tough on us. But we're true Americans, and we'll get through this thing together. So we, the people, want to make a statement to you at this time. We'd rather continue to cut grass, trim shrubs, and adjust our grocery list and move our families to a lower rental payment than to see you buckle and cater to these godless politicians that are trying. Yeah. Woo! We'll continue to cut grass and trim shrubs, and we'll cut back on our grocery list, and we'll even move if we have to get a lower rental payment. But don't you ever buckle and cater to these godless politicians that are trying to hold our country hostage. I promise you, Mr. President, we'll stay strong, and we're begging you to do the same. We're willing to sacrifice, adjust, and even fight to make sure that the next generation has the America that they can be proud of. I have 4 children, Mr. President, and 11 grandchildren, sir. And at this point, I'm ashamed at the political temperance of our nation. Mr. President, make America great again. Mr. President, keep America great. And Mr. President, keep us first. God bless you. Sad to say, our Congress has not only become anti-capitalism, they are anti-constitutionalists. Our forefathers gave us a federal law system that applies to every state. We are to enforce these laws, but we dare not change them. Guidelines are given to protect us, the people, from tyranny and from control. Things like free speech, the right to own and carry a weapon, and the freedom of press is promised to every citizen of the United States of America. Our liberal leaders are treating our Constitution like it's an outdated, out-of-touch, illiterate system. Every day, our Congress has to focus on conflict on leadership floors, just trying to keep the minimum of our rights, much less enforce them. Oh yeah, you dismiss and go home while we're trying to get unemployment and keep our families fed, and you perch in your fancy homes and ride around in your private jets while we're scrambling around trying to feed our family and trying to stay alive and just learning how to survive. They want to push social agendas to the point where they're willing to give up our country and our next generation. Can you believe right now that the Democratic Congress is holding up money to take care of small businesses and people on unemployment because they're interested in illegal Mexicans coming over the line that has absolutely nothing to do with this country? And I want to say to you, Republicans, bless God, you need to get some grit in your crawl and quit trying to fit their ever fancy. You need to quit bowing to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. You need to stand up for this country. Amen. They're anti-constitutionalist. Number 3, and this is the one that'll get me in a lot of trouble. I believe our government is anti-Christian. The First Amendment guarantees me freedom concerning my religion and the expression thereof. I have a right to assemble, and I have a right to petition. It also promises us the right to assemble peacefully. That means without interruption. Let me read what your Constitution says. Quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, some of you sway back good-for-nothings that have been ticked off because we're having church. Let me just express this to you. When they wrote the Constitution, there was no antibiotics. There was no x-rays. There was no CT scans. There was no ventilators. They only lived to be in their 50s. There were viruses everywhere. There were diseases everywhere. Most of them died of diseases on their way to this country. They've had more viruses when they wrote the Constitution than we've ever dreamed of. So don't give me this crap that the government has a right to tell us we can't have church because there's a virus going around this country. There has always been a virus. There always will be a virus. But no sheriff, no mayor, or no governor has a right to shut down the church. Government has banded the church? Really? The same government that allows the liquor stores to stay open tells me I can't go to church? The same government that's slaughtering babies in the abortion clinic tells me I can't go to church? You're out of your ever-loving mind! Now here's where I'm going to lose everything I got, and I don't care. I'm amazed at how low-down, sorry, cowardly, good-for-nothing, noodle-back, watered-down, milquetoast preachers shut their church down and never even put up an argument about it. You low-down, sorry, good-for-nothing, compromiser. I'm not anti-government. I'm not a rebel. I'm not a communist. I haven't had a speeding ticket in 30 years. I'm a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. But by God, let me tell you something. They're not going to run in here every time somebody gets a fever and tells me we can't have church, and they're going to shut the church down. And listen to me. Look up here. You dirty, rotten, egg-sucking preachers, look up here at me. You're an idiot to stand in front of a $2 million auditorium on top of a $3,000 trailer and preach to a bunch of people in automobiles. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Are you crazy? You got a $2 million auditorium and you preach it on a $3,000 trailer. You're crazy. Oh, and then we got spiritual cars now. Oh, yeah. Our cars are spiritual now. If you like what the preacher says, you honk. Honk. Some of those idiots have never shouted in their life, but they'll sit out in the parking lot, honk like a bunch of idiots in a traffic jam in California somewhere. Honk. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Flash your headlights if you like what's being said. Turn your wipers on to wave your hand. Turn your emergency flashers on if you feel like running. If that ain't the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, look up here. Bless God, I'm not a car inspector for the Department of Transportation. I don't care if you got headlights or not. I don't care if your wipers work or not. Will you come here? I'm going to preach the devil out of you. Sorry preachers, low down, sorry, compromising, stand for nothing preachers is what's killing this country. So they said we couldn't have church. So they started meeting out in the parking lot in their cars. Then they said you got to keep your windows up. Now they're saying you can't congregate at all. Now in California, they're throwing them off the internet. Once they get the foot in the door, they will never stop. Can I ask you a question if you don't think it's anti-Christian? How many mosques or temples have you heard of being raided by police? You ever thought about that? How come it's only Christian churches, mostly Baptist churches, that are being invaded? Pentecostal pastor contacted me last week. He's watching me now. While they were having church, 3 policemen walked in his church, gave him a citation for $500, and commanded that he shut the service down. They told him they can't meet in the parking lot. You can't let your windows down because this virus jumps on everybody. But the next block over, you can sit at Sonic side by side with other cars with your windows down, your radio on, eating food, talking to everybody, and everything's all right with it. If you're dumb enough to believe that this country ain't out against Christians, you don't deserve to have a church. There is an all-out war, and I want to serve notice from the president on down. There's one little country preacher that's going to stand up and preach and expose this mess for what it is. Little scared, wimpy preachers ran, hid, and trembled. Yeah. Controlled by a bunch of mossy-backed, God-denying liberals. Walmart, you can bump around shoulder to shoulder. Idiots running around with everything from underwear to diapers on their head for masks, acting like a bunch of idiots, and nobody thinks nothing of it. But you come to church and try to worship God and pray that God perform a miracle and remove a disease, and you get in trouble for it. And by the way, let me throw this in while I'm here. Every mayor that has invaded a church, every one of them, every mayor that has given a preacher a citation, every one of them are Democrats. If the Democrats win this next election, honey, we're going to go down to a battlefield we ain't never been on before, because the last thing they want is churches like this on the side of the road exposing them for what they really are. Let me tell you how crazy this country is. We're letting prisoners out of jail because of the virus and then threaten to put me in it. Are you crazy? I haven't done anything. You'll let a criminal out and put a preacher in for trying to get this nation back to God. I want to say to the law enforcement, you're so dogmatic about enforcing the law in us churches. Why don't you crack down on these whorehouses, these crack houses, these meth labs, and these sex slaves? Why aren't you out picking on them on Sunday morning and instead of trying? Now, I have told my people, if you're sick, do not come. If you have respiratory, do not come. If you have a runny nose or a cold, you're running a fever, you're weak in your body, do not come. If you're expecting a child in a motherly way, do not come. And I've never said one negative word about anybody that's not been coming to our church. But I want to say to you that are here and you that are listening, if you quit coming strictly because you were afraid of the government, I don't care if you never come back. You need to find another church. I don't care if you ever come back. Because there ain't no policeman, no mayor, no governor, and no president going to tell me I can't go to church. 44 years ago when I was a drunk, they left the bars open. 44 years ago when I was a dope addict, the meth labs was open. 44 years ago, the places of ill repute were open. Now God saved me, changed my life, turned me around, and I try to be a law-abiding, God-fearing Christian, and they threaten you with jail. Here's all I got to say. If you'll feed my fat butt, come get me, baby. You may put me in jail, but I'll preach in jail just like I'm preaching here this morning. You find another preacher that'll tell it this straight, and I'll take him on for monthly support. Some of you look like you don't like it, and I don't care whether you like it or not. You can like it, lump it, bump it, or jump it. That's exactly what kind of preacher is going to come over this pulpit. Second of all, I shouldn't even get on the second point. I'm out of time. I think I've said enough. I want to give you something to think about before we close. This was something that was sent to me by a friend of mine. All these people freaking out. Saw a lady the other day with a diaper over her head. But I've seen her without it. She looked a lot better with it on, so I'm not complaining. All you that are freaking out over viruses, bless your heart, you've washed your hands till they're raw. You bought enough toilet paper, you've rubbed your rear till you got diaper rash. I'm just about half cocked today. Are y'all catching that? From January to March, 35,000 people died of this virus. 75,000 mothers died giving childbirth. 118,000 died of the flu. 250,000 died of malaria. 262,000 died of suicide. 330,000 died from traffic accident. 411,000 died of AIDS. 612,000 died of alcohol. 1.2 million died from smoking. 2.0 million died of cancer. 3.1 million died of communicable diseases. 10 million has died of abortion. 10 million. I got a question. If you're going to raise hell over 35,000 dying of a virus, why ain't somebody standing up and raising hell about 10 million babies getting slaughtered out of their mother's womb in tax-funded abortion clinics? I might as well close because you got leaving on your mind anyhow. But let me give you this. Brother Chris, please get it ready to play immediately. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with this mess? I got kids here. I got teenagers here. I got young married couples here. I got elderly. What am I going to do, Brother Mark? It's not an easy thing as a preacher to balance honoring God, protecting your people, and honoring the law. I have done everything the governor of our state has told us to do, plus 20% more to make sure you are in a safe environment today. This is safer than the emergency room of our local hospital. That's how clean this building is right now. And I thank God for Mr. Bill Lee saying that this is an essential gathering so that we could gather. I want to thank our governor. But now, Brother Danny, there's another side to this. There's a God side to this thing. Why would God let this happen? First of all, I think it's to reveal just how cowardly preachers are. I think it also reveals how much we miss church when it's not like it used to be. But could it be that God's plunged us into darkness to send a light of revival? Could it be that this is what it's taken to get people to wake up and say, man, this world's in a mess. I better find something better than what I've got right now. And watch this. Every revival has started with a Bible. And I'm going to give you a 3-minute history of a Bible that's sitting in the Oval Office of the United States of America right now. Watch this video.
There was a great revival in the Hebrides in the early 1900s. Began to moved up to the pleading for it into the 40s. Maybe we could say it topped out in the early 50s. 2 old women, one was 84 years old and one was 82 years old. One was blind and one was humped over so badly with spinal stenosis, just arched over. But they had passion for revival. They wanted God to work. This is what happened. They couldn't even get out to the church to pray. They couldn't even get out to the church to worship. Their house became a place to meet. People came in. They got so passionate about revival coming to their Isle, the Isle of Lewis. They got so passionate about it. They confronted the preacher and wanted to know if he was thoroughly right with God. And they prayed and prayed and prayed. And they'd seen the Lord, they said, with the church filled up and God blessing, a great overflow. And the fire of God struck that tiny little obscure place off the coast of Scotland. And when it happened, there was a young teenage boy that got saved in it. His name was Donald, and the preacher became so dependent upon Donald and so close to Donald, he would ask him to lead in public prayers and help him with the meetings, and he did. Oh, how God worked. People began to hear about it, and the revival fire spread. It spread. And God blessed in a great way. Those 2 old women, the kind of people don't want in their church anymore. And from that same island, there was a young girl who was a cousin to Donald Smith, who immigrated to America. Her name was Marianne Smith McLeod. She came to America and in 1936. She met a man named Fred, and they were married. They fell in love. They were married. God blessed in a great way. And those old women were her aunts. And they came out of that fiery revival, They really experienced revival. And they sent a Bible, a copy of the Word of God that had been used in a special way in that revival, to Mary Ann. She started having children. I think it was 1937, she had her first child. They named him after his father, Fred. Then she had her second child, named after herself, Mary Ann. Then she had her third child, Elizabeth. Then she had her fourth child, and she was so impacted by this teenage boy God had used in that revival of the Hebrides. She named him Donald. And she gave him that Bible, that Hebrides Revival Bible. He was born in 1946. He's now the 45th President of the United States. And that Revival Bible is in the Oval Office. I'm saying to you, I don't know how, why, I don't know how it all comes together. But I believe God is putting some things together to give us just a window. If he could find some open people who know what the window's for. Can this be the time the window's open? Providentially, God has prepared the moment, and we will become the people of prayer, pleading with God. This is a plea. Will thou not revive us again? Will you be a part of that? Will you?
These are the days of Elijah, declare